My name is Lena. I was 26 years old and my life was small. Really, really small. I lived in a rented room. The walls were thin. So thin I could hear my neighbors breathe at night. The window frame was warped and broken. Every winter, the cold air cut right through it like a knife sliding through paper. My room had almost nothing in it. One chair, one narrow bed, one lamp that flickered like it was too tired to stay on. No TV, no heater, just silence and cold and the sound of my own thoughts. My life was built on numbers. Hard, ugly numbers. Student loan debt, overdue utility bills, the cost of medicine for my mama. She lived far away in a small village. She needed medication every month, and I was the only one who could send it to her. Every week I called her. I forced myself to sound cheerful, happy even. She always told me not to worry. Her voice was soft and raspy, but the silence between her words, that silence told the real story. I sent her every spare cent I had. Every single one. Some weeks I had to choose. Bus fare or a loaf of bread. Not both, just one. There were nights when hunger was my only company. A hollow, aching feeling that kept me awake until dawn. I walked everywhere because I couldn't afford to ride. My shoes wore through at the soles. My clothes faded. I looked like a ghost walking through a city that didn't even know I existed. This city had glass towers that touched the sky, luxury cars on every block, people in designer clothes laughing, living big. And then there was me. A handful of coins, a heart full of exhaustion, invisible. Everything changed because of my girl, Dra. Dra was my best friend. She was the only person who still looked at me like I was worth something. Not like I was a charity case. Not with pity in her eyes, just real friendship. Solid and steady. One day she called me. She was excited. She told me about a gala at a 5-star hotel downtown. A fancy event, the kind where people wear diamonds and drink champagne like it's water. She said the entry was free if you knew the right names, and she knew them. I said no immediately. I told her I had nothing to wear. Just one old black dress, thin as paper, cheap lipstick, worn-out shoes. I told her I didn't belong in a place like that. But Dra didn't quit. She never did. She talked about possibilities, about meeting people who lived in a different world, about stepping outside the fog I had been living in for so long. She kept pushing, soft but steady. Finally, I gave in. I brushed my hair until it shone. I put on the last of my lipstick. I slipped into that old black dress. I looked in the cracked mirror and told myself it was just one night. Then I stepped onto a train. It felt like a spaceship heading to another planet. The hotel took my breath away. It was like walking into a cathedral. Gold everywhere. Soft light falling from crystal chandeliers. The smell of expensive flowers and aged bourbon hanging in the warm air. Soft jazz floating from somewhere I couldn't see. The rustle of silk dresses. The clink of crystal glasses. Women wore diamonds around their necks. Men wore watches that probably cost more than my mama's whole house back in the village. I felt like an intruder. I pressed my back against the cold marble wall. I watched the crowd from the edges like someone staring through a shop window at things they could never afford. I told myself I didn't belong here. I told myself I should leave. Then I saw him. He was standing by a floor-to-ceiling window. The city lights glowed behind him like a painting. He was older. His hair was silver, clean, and distinguished. His suit was a midnight blue. It fit him perfectly, like it had been made just for his body. He stood completely still while everyone around him moved and laughed and talked too loud. He didn't join the socializing. He held a glass of amber liquid but never drank from it. His face was calm, deeply, carefully calm, like a man who had already thought through every possible outcome of every possible situation. Then his eyes found mine. He didn't look away. Most people, when you accidentally make eye contact with them, they look away fast. Awkward smile, maybe a small nod, then gone. Not him. He stared, steady, intense, like he was reading something written on my face that I didn't even know was there. My face went hot. I looked down at my scuffed shoes. When I looked back up, he was walking toward me. Slow steps, deliberate, commanding, like the whole room belonged to him and he knew it. He stopped just a few inches away. He didn't smile, didn't offer a polite greeting. He just looked at me for a moment. Then he asked for my name. His voice was deep and rough like gravel wrapped in velvet. I told him, "Lena." He studied me long and quiet like he was calculating something. Then without a single extra word, he reached into his jacket. He pulled out a card, cream-colored, heavy, with gold lettering pressed into it. Dex Mororo. He held it out to me. "Call me tomorrow," he said, not a suggestion, a command. And then he turned and disappeared into the crowd. Just like that. That night, I sat in my cold room. I held that card in both hands. It felt heavy, not because of its weight, but because of what it might mean. I stared at it for a long time. I thought about the hunger, the debt, my mama's raspy voice on the phone, the holes in my shoes, the flickering lamp above my head. In the morning, my hands were shaking. I dialed the number. A voice answered immediately, calm and professional. It told me a car was already on its way. I almost hung up, but I didn't. An hour later, a black sedan pulled up outside my building. The interior was leather and silence, clean and quiet in a way my life had never been. As we drove through the city, I looked out the window. The streets I walked every single day looked different from inside that car. Smaller, less scary. The car took me to a glass tower overlooking the river. A silent assistant led me through long hallways to a room where Dex sat waiting. He got straight to the point. No small talk, no pleasantries. He told me he had observed my situation. He said he could offer a solution. He offered me security, a real home, fine clothes, the best medical care for my mama, an end to every financial burden that had been crushing me for years. In exchange, I was to be his companion. Not a lover, not a wife, just a presence at his side. A business arrangement governed by strict rules. Rule 1. Never question his work. Rule 2. Never speak about our private life to outsiders. Rule 3. Never seek the company of other men. He spoke without emotion, like he was reading from a contract he had already memorized. I went back to my apartment. I looked at the gray walls, the empty cupboards, the holes in my only pair of shoes. I felt the exhaustion sitting in my bones like old cement. I understood something then. I wasn't choosing between love and money. I was choosing between survival and slow erasure, between living and disappearing quietly. I called the number. I said yes. The transition was surreal, like stepping into someone else's dream. I moved into a mansion. It felt more like a museum than a home. My new bedroom was larger than my entire old apartment. Silk bed sheets, perfumes, and crystal bottles that I didn't even know how to use. A closet full of clothes and colors I had never owned before. Dex presented me with a contract, a thick stack of papers, fine print everywhere. My hand shook as I signed my name on the last page. That first night, lying in a bed that felt too soft to be real, I looked up at the ceiling in the dark. I was safe. For the first time in years, I was truly safe, but I was not free. Life in the Maroro estate was a lesson in silence. The house was enormous. Marble floors, long, shadowy hallways, rooms I wasn't allowed to enter, wings that stayed locked always. Dex was a ghost in his own home. He appeared at dinner, quiet and formal. Then he disappeared into his locked study and didn't come out. He was never cruel, but he was cold. Cold as the stone floors under my feet. He spoke in short, direct commands. His eyes were always searching for something I couldn't name. I spent my days in the garden or the library. I tried to find peace in the beauty around me, but there was a hollowness in my chest that wouldn't leave. I had everything I had ever prayed for, and I felt like a phantom. Rosa, the housekeeper, was my only regular company. She was a quiet woman, kind but careful. She kept her eyes down whenever I tried to start a real conversation. I wondered what she saw when she looked at me. A lucky girl, or a tragic one. One afternoon, the wind caught the door to Dex's study. It swung open just slightly, just a few inches. I knew the rules. I knew I wasn't supposed to go in there, but curiosity is a stubborn thing. I stepped inside. The room smelled like leather and old paper. There was a large desk by the window, and on that desk there was a photograph. A woman. Dark flowing hair, a smile so wide and warm it reached her eyes. She wore a vibrant red dress. She looked alive, fully, completely alive, like joy was something she wore naturally. I felt something sharp and sudden in my chest. Not jealousy for Dex, but jealousy for her joy, for whatever it was that made her smile like that. That night at dinner, I asked him about her. The temperature in the room dropped instantly. Dex said nothing. He simply stood up from the table and walked away. For 2 days, the house was filled with a silence so heavy it pressed against my skin, like something was about to break. I asked Rosa about the woman in the photo. She looked at me with something I had not seen before. Genuine fear. Not discomfort. Fear. She told me quietly, "Some things are better left in the dark." That was the moment everything shifted inside me, the safety Dex had offered me. I suddenly understood that it was built on something hidden, something buried deep. I started watching him more closely. I noticed the late-night visitors, men in dark suits arriving without announcement, leaving without a word. I heard hushed conversations and languages I didn't understand. I watched Dex's face when he thought no one was looking. The mask slipped sometimes. Just a little. Just enough. Something was very wrong. Then came the proposal that changed everything. Dex came to me one evening. His tone was more serious than usual. He had legal documents in his hand. He set them on the table in front of me. He explained calmly. For his business to operate smoothly, he needed the appearance of stability. A settled, respectable life. He needed a wife on paper. He assured me nothing would change between us. No intimacy, no emotional expectations, just a signature, just a name on a document that would make me Mrs. Maroro. He said it was a formality, a way to protect the life he had already given me. I thought about my mama, her new home, her recovering health, her voice on the phone, stronger now, warmer now. I agreed. The wedding was cold and clinical. We stood in a sterile government office. We signed the registry. A woman behind the desk stamped a document. We walked out into the gray afternoon as husband and wife. No flowers, no music, no celebration, just the cold, unfamiliar weight of a diamond ring on my finger. I felt like a piece of equipment being set up for a specific task. To the outside world, we were a powerful man and his beautiful young bride. To us, we were two people locked together by a contract. The illusion shattered on a Tuesday afternoon. I decided to visit Dex's office. I wanted to bring him lunch. A small gesture, a tiny bridge across the cold distance between us. I stepped into the lobby of his building. Marble floors, high ceilings, quiet professionalism everywhere. And then a woman's voice tore through it all. She was screaming. Her pain and rage bounced off the glass walls like something physical. Her name was Cassie. She was shaking, her face wet with tears and fury. She said Dex had promised her everything. Marriage, a future together, a real life. And then when she stopped being useful to him, he threw her away like she was nothing. Then she saw me. Her eyes locked onto mine. They held two things at once, pity and hatred. She called me a replacement. She said I was a tool in a game I didn't even understand was being played. I walked out of that building fast, heart hammering, legs barely holding me up. That night, while Dex was occupied, I found his phone left on the dining table. I picked it up. I shouldn't have, but I did. The messages I found confirmed everything my gut had been telling me for months. I wasn't the first. I wasn't the only one. There were other women kept in various arrangements, different cities, different situations, same pattern, same cold, calculated game. I looked at my wedding ring. A wave of nausea moved through me. I wasn't a companion. I wasn't even a wife. I was a front. I made a decision that night. I could not stay passive in my own life. Not anymore. Using the monthly allowance Dex gave me, I hired a private investigator. His name was Mr. Carver. It was a dangerous move. I knew that. But the silence of that mansion had become unbearable, and I needed the truth more than I needed safety. 2 weeks later, I met Mr. Carver in a busy cafe downtown. He slid a folder across the table toward me. I opened it, and the world got very quiet around me. Dex Maroro didn't just run a business. He ran a web of deception, shell companies moving dirty money, women used as legal shields, transactions carefully designed to hide who was really responsible. Then Mr. Carver pointed to one specific document. In his rush to close a recent deal, Dex had transferred ownership of a major holding company into my name. A multi-million-dollar entity sitting in my name. On paper, I was the sole owner. He had likely planned to move it back once the heat from an ongoing financial investigation died down, once the coast was clear. But for now, the law recognized me as the owner. Me, Lena, the girl from the cold, thin-walled room, the girl who once chose between bus fare and bread. I sat in that noisy cafe, the city buzzing all around me, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Cold, hard clarity. Dex had spent his entire life controlling people through their needs, through their fears, through their desperation. He saw my poverty and thought it made me weak. He saw my gratitude and thought it made me blind. But he was wrong. A woman who has survived on almost nothing. A woman who has walked through hunger and cold and shame and kept moving anyway. That woman knows exactly how to endure a storm. I did not confront him immediately. I spent the next month playing my role perfectly, quietly, patiently. I attended the galas. I wore the silk dresses. I smiled for the cameras at his side. I played the beautiful, grateful, quiet wife. But at night, when the house was asleep, I studied. I learned the language of finance, business law, corporate structure. I studied the company that now carried my name. I learned its assets, its vulnerabilities, its legal standing. I worked with Mr. Carver to document every illegal transfer Dex had made using my identity. Every transaction, every signature, every thread of evidence. I was not a ghost anymore. I was a hunter. The end came on our first wedding anniversary. Dex arranged a private dinner, a rare moment of warmth from him. Candles on the table, good wine, a gesture of something almost like romance. As he raised his glass to our success, I reached into my bag. I placed a folder on the table between us. Inside were the documents proving my legal ownership of the company, the evidence of his fraud, the illegal transfers made in my name, and a clean, clear set of divorce papers. Papers that removed every piece of leverage he thought he had over me. His face changed. The calm businessman disappeared. What replaced him was something raw, something desperate, something ugly. He told me I was nothing. He said he had pulled me up from the gutter. He said he could throw me right back. I didn't move. I didn't raise my voice. I told him quietly and clearly that while he was busy looking down at me, he had forgotten to watch his own feet. I told him I was leaving and I was taking the company with me. The legal battle that followed was short. With the evidence I had gathered, Dex had no real choice. He settled quietly, quickly to avoid prison, to avoid the kinds of public exposure that would destroy everything he had built. I walked away from that marriage with enough wealth to make sure my mama would never worry about anything again. Ever. But the most important thing I walked away with was not money. It was my name. My actual, real, unburdened name. I sold the company. I moved to a small house by the sea. White walls, big windows, salt air in the mornings, sunlight everywhere. I don't wear diamonds anymore. I don't miss the marble hallways or the silk sheets or the crystal perfume bottles. I work in a small office now. The walls are thick enough to keep out the cold. The windows are large enough to let in all the light. Sometimes I look at my hands. These hands that once held a few coins and a tube of cheap lipstick. These hands that shook when they dialed a stranger's number. These hands that signed papers I didn't fully understand. These hands that later, slowly, carefully rewrote everything. I see the strength in them now. I am no longer invisible. I am no longer a ghost walking through a city that doesn't know I exist. My name is Lena, and for the first time in my life, I am truly, completely, deeply free. Thanks for listening to my story on Learn English by Stories. If you liked it, hit that subscribe button, drop a comment, and tell me where you're listening from.